while I have a huge amount of respect for each one of our guests, it is seldom the case that it moves further from there, goes into disbelief for a brief period, and then almost evolves into awe. This may sound like hyperbole or that I'm exaggerating, but I'm really not, because that is precisely what I felt when I got to know a little bit our guest today. She is a mental health counselor, but from our perspective, what is a lot more significant is that just hearing uh, a very abridged version of some circumstances that she has had to navigate and curveballs that life has thrown at her, it was only natural that I would begin to be absolutely awestruck in terms of how she dealt with it, in terms of how she emerged, and despite and because of all that, has sort of decided to dedicate herself and a significant part of her life to mental health and mental health work. Joining us is Anuckriti, and I'm really grateful that not only has she made the time, but she has also quite openly, quite bravely, and very vulnerably, decided to share some of these lived experiences with all of us, primarily in service of informing and ultimately also, I think, conveying, which is a very important part of discussions around mental health, that for the most part, things are transitional. One does come out of them. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and one can lead a fulfilling and fulfilled life. So, without further ado, let me welcome Anukriti. We're calling this session of talk therapy crisis to catharsis, which is something that she seems to quite perfectly epitomize and represent. And I'm really happy that you're here, Anukriti, and thank you for making the time.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, Karthik. Those are some lovely words that you've said. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, and I meant each one. I tend not to talk too much about the work that my guests are doing because I tend to mess it up royally, which is why I'm going to ask you, before we get into other areas, to please tell us a little bit about your current work and what you've been doing for a while.
So, I'm Anukriti, and I have been working as a mental health counselor. And currently, I am working as an associate therapist with this very small organization called the Weird Therapist. And we are a group of therapists who work with queer and neurodivergent folks primarily, but obviously we also take up other cases. And other than that, I'm also working as a consultant with the one-to-one help. It's an organization that places people at institutions and multinational companies. And I've been working for about more than 1 year at a multinational company as their in-house counselor.
Wonderful. Now, as we chatted offline, let's say, and you sort of gave me a sense of some of the larger situations that came up in your life, which really tested and stretched your psychological resolve and caused a great deal of distress. Um, to whatever extent you're willing to, give us a sense of specifically some of those events, please.
Sure, sure. I don't know where to begin because I feel like it's been quite a journey. So, how about I start with what made me get into the field of mental health?
Sure, absolutely.
How I got here. So I think even when I was in school, my I was still struggling I was still very confused, and I wasn't sure what path to take on as a career. And I remember my mother being particularly insistent that, taking up arts, which would be the subjects of psychology, history, and civics and all of that would be a better path for me. But I was hell bent on, no, no, it's like being a science student seems right for me. And I was a science student, but I remember not really enjoying my childhood or my schooling so much. And then somehow I decided to, do my bachelor's in arts. And I went to Symbiosis in Pune. And while I was there, in the first, it was a course that I chose. So I really enjoyed myself, I think, in the beginning. But there was just something about being away from home that suddenly started to affect me. And not that home was the best place for me to be, because I come from a pretty dysfunctional family. And growing up at home wasn't the easiest thing for me. I but yeah, anyway, I started living in Pune, and within, I think, 1 year, for 1 year, I had a good time. I was in the top 40 students. I was enjoying myself, and exploring the city. But then something shifted in the second year, and somehow I found myself in, the deep, deep gallows of depression. And I was suddenly, for 2 weeks, I remember I absolutely could not go to bed. Like, I could not sleep for more than 2 hours at a go, no matter what time I slept at. I would just simply wake up after 2 hours. And I remember like feeling like, I could, like there was somebody going at it in my head with a hammer. I remember that feeling very distinctly. I remember also not wanting to talk to anyone, not wanting to get out of my bed, not wanting to eat anything at all. And I started to get like a terrible stomach infection, stomach ache, because I wasn't eating at all. Um, I was barely using the washroom even, and nobody could make sense of what was happening. That was also the time that I was living with roommates and flatmates, and I was 19, they were 19. And I guess it just so happened that this was back in 2017. Mental health awareness wasn't really on the rise at that point of time, from what I remember at least. And my friends just simply couldn't understand what was going wrong. They were just like, just get up and like go to class. Like, what's wrong with you? And that's exactly the question I kept asking myself too, that what is wrong with me? What was wrong with me? Um, and I think it was what made it worse was that I wasn't able to get any sort of help at that point of time. I went to my
I'm really sorry. Can I ask you to hold that thought only because it's a very important aspect of what I'd like to talk about, the help and support part of it. But also, I think equally important is what you just said prior to this, which I would have asked you about anyway, because I think it's human instinct to uh, try to investigate and find reasons and attribute what's happening to us to certain specific factors, even if we don't have necessarily the objectivity to do it at the time, maybe later, that can vary. But since you said that you kept asking yourself, why is this happening? Did you find any answers? Whether they were authentic or not doesn't matter, but anything that satisfied you intellectually at that time? Did you, for example, figure that, okay, fine, this is coming from an existential place?
I think it was coming from an existential place. Like, I think it was coming from a place of, this is the time that I should be really enjoying myself. I am 19 and I'm in a city alone, and it's a pretty happening city. And, I'm in a good institution. Having the time of my life. It's a course I chose, and I am still not happy. And I think that was very unsettling. The
And
reality.
did you then also have uh, the awareness, or did it also strike your mind at all that whatever you were beginning to experience could be potentially related to things from further back in your life?
I don't think I had that kind of understanding at that point of time.
Hmm.
I think I was too young to understand that. And I honestly did not really know so much about mental health at that
Hmm.
point of time
Hmm.
myself. So I do remember also struggling with, the thoughts of what is the point of life? What am I even doing in life? Is this how life is going to be? Is this how it's always going to be? And I think I also remember it was pretty difficult to just get through the day on 2 hours of sleep. Uh, and my behavior changed, how I was talking to people changed, how I was dressing up changed. So many things suddenly changed, and I could not understand when this would stop. And it it got slightly better, I think, after say 2 weeks. But still, I knew in the back of my head that, okay, this feeling is perhaps going to stay.
Hmm.
And
Please
yeah,
carry
you
on.
was I was just saying that I remember even when it wasn't like, and then the depression sort of stayed for years and years. And now I know, of course, that I struggle with a dysthemic form of depression, which is like a depression that can have major depressive episodes. But other than that, I have like a persistent mild form of depression. So
Hmm.
it's a feeling and something that stays and is going to stay, is what I have been told also. So, but then I think for a young person, that was really, really hard to understand. Because I remember it wasn't like, I wouldn't have happy moments. Like
Hmm.
I would have happy moments, I would have joyful moments, and suddenly it would hit me that, oh my God, it's like as jaise hi suraj ढलने लगता था, I remember. It would hit me that, oh my God, अब रात होने वाली है, and I'm going to be alone with my thoughts.
Hmm. Hmm.
And now, no matter how much fun I have had today, I have to bank on it because it's going to be tough now.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was really hard.
Um, let's now then, if you're okay with it, get into the help and support part of it, because इसमें भी एक दो layers हैं और nuances हैं. You already mentioned quite correctly that it was an era in our country where there wasn't necessarily the type of discourse that there is now around mental health. That combined with an individual's own lack of awareness. What made you, or who for that matter, made you even seek help? What shape or form did it come in, or lack thereof?
So I remember even before this, like, this episode I had had where I couldn't sleep for 2 hours and it was really, really intense. I remember even before that, like going back home and telling my mother that, hey, I think I should consult a therapist. I've been thinking about it and maybe it is a good idea because I don't even remember what had like pushed me to say that. I think perhaps I did feel a little bit low at some points in my schooling,
Hmm.
especially in 11th and 12th. But then, it's like changing cities, so many changes, and all of that sort of got muffled. So I had asked my mother to that I should consult a therapist, maybe go for one session and see what it's like. And I remember her saying to me very clearly that, I know people, beta, who have depression, and trust me, this is not what it looks like. And I remember like being very, very confused that, oh, is it supposed to look a certain way? Is it supposed to present a certain way? And then finally, in when I was in college,
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. मेरा एक और सवाल है.
हाँ,
Why do you think she said what she said? Was it perhaps because she was in denial? Was it perhaps because she didn't want you to take that route because she is maybe of that generation that thinks it's all bunkum? What do you think? Why do you think she said this is not what it looks like?
so I think one, she said that because there was a lot of stigma, that
Hmm.
is for sure. And secondly, I even now, like, even though I've lived with depression for years now, when I meet people or when I talk to people or when I even like when I'm giving, say, when I'm talking to my clients, people would not ever realize that, oh, I have depression.
Hmm.
Like, people would never, because I laugh,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
go about my life
Correct.
like
So you
a
do
regular.
normal things.
Exactly. So for people, that does not make sense. For people,
Hmm.
it's like, people who are um, those individuals who are really, really sad
Hmm.
or
Hmm. Hmm.
aren't
Got
able
it.
to get out of bed, they are the ones who
Hmm.
probably really need help. But
Hmm.
if you can get out of bed on most days, then and you can function, you can go do your job, then it's fine. You
Hmm.
probably don't need a therapist.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, she pretty much dismisses the idea, but you seek out a therapist in any case. What happens?
So then, after during this phase of 2 weeks where I wasn't able to sleep at all, I decided that it was about time, and I found out that there's a college therapist, and I went there. But unfortunately, the college therapist was not the best either. And she just said that, um, just, beta, just try this. She suggested some alternative medicines. And she said that she gave me a number for that. And she said that just try to come to class early morning, just eat roti sabzi and come to class at 9 a.m. and you'll feel better. Trust me. And I was simply like, that is the very problem, ma'am, that, I am unable to do that. And how do I explain this to you?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I also remember that, um, there were all these rumors, and all of my friends, before I went to consult the therapist, all of my friends were like, don't go, don't go. And I was like, why? Like, what's the worst that can happen? And they were like, no, no, she records all the sessions and she reports them to college authorities. So there's so much stigma that I faced, even from my friends. Like, they were like almost like, um, you know, I remember, like, now that I think about this, stigma that my friends around me carried it. They were almost like holding me by my hand and
Yeah.
telling me, don't go, don't go, don't
Hmm,
go.
hmm, hmm,
That.
hmm, hmm, hmm. Which of course, I mean, because it all becomes the antithesis of the overall 360-degree support system that one wants or needs or desires. Because it's not just about finding a good professional who will intervene, but also the other many, many important ancillary, people and things that you want all to be on the same page.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even the smallest things, like I remember the first time I went to see the therapist in my college, I was standing outside and somebody from my class saw me there. And they came up to me and they were like, "Why are you standing here?
Hmm.
Stand here." And I was like, no, it's honestly okay. I am making this decision. It's fine. Like it felt like I had to convince so many other people before I could make that decision for
Hmm.
myself. And this is something that I have seen even today in my work, that, a lot of people who come to seek help in the MNC where I'm working, they tell me that, मैडम, हम इतने टाइम से बाहर से ही देख के चले जाते थे क्योंकि हमें डर लगता था किसी ने हमें देखा यहाँ खड़े हुए तो वो क्या सोचेंगे हमारे।
Hmm. 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 Yeah, I mean, that is something I can sadly corroborate because, of course, I think it's safe to say, generalize and say that ये relatively tier two cities वगैरह में ज़्यादा है. I being in Jaipur, any number of therapists locally have told me that their standing instructions are things like सर्विस एंट्रेंस का गेट खुला रखना so that we can exit the car and enter into your facility and vice versa as quickly as possible जिससे कोई देख नहीं ले वगैरह वगैरह.
Yeah, yeah.
So and then what happens next, because obviously this lady is no help whatsoever.
Hmm. Then I think then I spoke to my mother and I told her that, listen, I have gone to the college counselor and that has not been helpful. This is too much. I really need help and you speak to someone. And I recommended this family friend who's also somebody who my mom works with. And I said that, they would probably know what to do in such a situation, because I remembered that they had mentioned going to therapy once
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
they hadn't seemed so stigmatized about.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then finally, we went, mom consulted her friend and he recommended a counselor. And I spoke to that counselor and I had a very, very good experience. However, it was really sad that she unfortunately told me that, this is a pretty serious case. And
Hmm.
I think that you should talk to somebody who's in your city who you can go and see every day more regularly, and
Huh.
somebody.
So just to quickly put this in context, of course, I know this because you had shared with me, but for our viewers, that time you were still at Simbi in Pune studying, and
Yeah.
you were seeing this therapist whom you finally found you resonated with, or vice versa, back home, which was at that time also Ahmedabad.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So then she said that I should probably switch my therapist or do something of that sort. And but then it had been very, very helpful. And she was able to, and I asked her to intervene on my behalf, speak to my parents, and all of that. And so then I went home and I visited another therapist in Ahmedabad itself, because that's where my parents were able to find connections. And there I finally got diagnosed with depression. And they also suggested that I take medication. So they put me on medication also. And then that was a very difficult journey because being on medication and being that young, I think I started medication when I was 19,
Mm.
and then living in a different city on my own, that was very hard to manage, managing all the side effects on my own.
Right. And of course, to add that you were essentially doing a academic program that you also weren't particularly enjoying. So
Yeah,
there was
yeah,
that whole aspect to it as well.
absolutely.
Mm.
And that was very, very difficult because I still remember that that suddenly, as soon as I started medication, I started feeling a lot of nausea, and I lost my appetite almost completely.
Mm.
And suddenly I was throwing up a lot, and I was doing and it was really, really hard to also keep track of all the medications.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
They also take about 4 to 8 weeks to have an effect.
Absolutely.
That was also quite difficult to manage on my own. So then there was that. And then I remember developing significant suicidal ideation also, which somehow got even worse because my friends in Symbiosis sort of started to they started to really become very upset with me. Like I remember at one point, there was this instance where I was, for a few weeks, I was just crying every single night without fail. And I had a roommate. So I remember one day my roommate gets really upset with me and she comes up to me and she's like, listen, I can't take it anymore. You're crying every single night. I don't know what to do about this, but it's really affecting my sleep. So can you go and cry somewhere else? And I
Mm.
remember feeling like something just broke inside of me because this was also my best friend at that time, and I had expected so much more. But now that I look back at it in retrospect, we were all 19-year-olds, so it's probably a lot to ask for. And all of us are living outside our homes for the first time, going to college for the first time. um, and this also sort of highlights the importance of mental health awareness and, basic empathy.
Yeah.
But I remember this very, very clearly. And I remember then, sort of just going. Luckily, we had rented out a flat in a housing society, which was very friendly with students and everything.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I would just go niche, I would take walks and I would sort of just cry while taking a walk. I would call up my mother. Luckily, my mother was on my side since therapy had started officially in Ahmedabad. And then I would still, and then slowly, slowly, because of the suicidal ideation, somehow that really scared everybody in college. And then it led to this kind of excommunication, complete excommunication, where people
Wow.
just stopped talking to me because some in and in college, I think, or schools, what happens is that if a small group, or let's say 45% of people stop talking to you, then everybody sort of just kind
Then
of,
वो mob mentality हो जाता है.
so that is what kind of happened. And that was very, very heartbreaking and difficult to navigate. Although there were, one or two people who still were speaking to me, who were talking to me, were friends with me.
Mm.
Um, so they sort of helped me carry on. Um, and I wasn't like, even with my close friends, I wasn't completely excommunicated. They would still call me to parties and everything, but then, they would be like, they would not understand when I would not want to be alone at nights, when I would not want to um, sort of go out partying every other day. Or maybe if I was on a particular day really wanting to numb myself, then I would want to go out partying a lot. So they would not be able to understand कि कभी कभी इसको बहुत पार्टी करना
Hmm.
होता है, कभी कभी बिल्कुल नहीं करना होता है, all of that. So yeah, college was a very, very difficult time for me.
You know, we can, of course, go on and on. Obviously, I don't want you to relive so many unpleasant phases, but there are just, if with your permission, what I think we'll do is that there are again one or two more specific phases that I want to ask you about because I think they're really, really significant. Perhaps we can do that. You're also queer. That also was a very large, uh, perhaps from your parents' perspective, a cataclysmic revelation. Speak a little to that phase and what you felt.
Yeah, yeah. I think when I was in college, I wasn't out yet. And somehow, now that I think about it, now that I've thought about it a lot, I have also come to realize that I had always found it very hard to make friends
Hmm.
while I was even in school or to fit in.
Hmm.
That had always been and continues to be a
Hmm.
problem for me, and that probably comes from my queer identity as well. So once college sort of came to an end, like towards the end of it, I went to this event organized by a queer organization in Ahmedabad. And it just suddenly hit me like a ton of bricks that, oh, I am queer. So I identify as pansexual, and that suddenly became crystal clear to me as soon as I went to that event. I felt at home. I felt like everything that was being talked about was relevant to me. And
The world made sense.
yes, exactly. And that was at the age of 21.
Hmm.
And yeah, and almost immediately, I think at that point of time, I was also like done with the whole aspect of being nice to my parents,
Hmm.
or um, you know, really take being very careful about what they think, because I was already like, okay, I know I'm in the bad books now.
Yeah.
So I just went up
Yeah.
to my mother and I asked her if she could accompany me to an event.
Okay.
And I told her at home that I identify as queer, as a queer person, and this is my reality. And surprisingly, her reaction was like she was okay with it. Surprisingly,
Hmm.
she said that that's all right, and I think perhaps she had known.
Hmm. Hmm.
um and then I asked her if she would be willing to come with me for an event. And so it was an event where everybody could ask whatever questions they had related to queerness, and they could write it on chits,
Hmm.
and then everybody would in the room would pick up the chits and read them and
Hmm.
answer the
Hmm. Hmm.
questions together. So I thought it was a good event to take my mother to, and she felt good after going there, after sort of seeing that, I'm not the only one
Hmm.
like this. But yeah, so
Yeah, sorry, please.
so that was also something that was a very big part of my identity that only became clear to me, I think, once I was very, very depressed, and I decided that I had to sort of get to know who I am really. And yeah.
So, from what I've observed and of the many queer close dear friends that I have, there are, of course, any number of different sources of distress, but two major ones tend to be, and please correct me if I'm wrong. One, of course, is when one finally decides to come out and, reactions of family, etc. And one, of course, perhaps which begins a lot earlier and goes on a lot longer, is your own internal sort of confusion, conflict in terms of who you are and your identity. Um, Given, thank God for small mercies, that your mum's response was much more palatable than perhaps you expected. Uh, Talk, at least briefly, if you will, about your own internal thing. How long had you been sort of sitting with this and wondering?
I think I had been sitting with this pretty much since the age of 5 till I
Oof.
was 21, because I think a part of me knew that I felt attracted towards the same gender as well. But it was really, really hard for me to put words to it or to come to terms with it.
So
And
put words to it and come to terms with it, in my understanding, are two very different things. When you say come to terms with it, would it be fair to say that in your case, there was also a lot of denial and guilt?
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. There was a lot of denial, there was a lot of guilt, and there was also like this whole sense of uh just being very different and always feeling like, why am I so different? Why am I so weird? Why am I so strange as a person? And, why can't I just fit in? That sense and that feeling had always been there. And I think it was when I went to that event that I first for the first time felt like, oh, it's okay to be different, and being quote unquote normal is not necessarily the best thing,
Mm, mm, mm.
and it's okay if you don't fit into that aspect. And I think that was really, really important for me, in even in terms of understanding my mental health. But I remember it was in these institutions that being queer sort of became uh, kind of like a problem for me. Like, I remember even I don't, like something that stopped me from I remember when I was in college, when I was around, let's say, 19, between the ages of 19 to 20, this term bi-curious had become very, very
Yeah, yeah.
common. I remember my friends were using it quite a lot, and a lot of people in my hostel, in the girls' hostel, had said that, oh, we think we might be bi-curious. And I remember I would like very carefully watch people's reactions when they said that. And I would sort of observe how the other girls would just sort of, group together and be like,
Hmm,
oh my
hmm,
God, it's
hmm,
just a fad, and, it doesn't mean anything.
hmm, hmm.
Oh, and if it's real, then, or, whatever derogatory statements they would make, I would sort of hear that and just go more and more, just wither away a little
Of
more and
course,
be like,
absolutely.
okay, this is not the space for me to probably do this.
It's unimaginable. But in any case, what I most marvel at is just the sheer number of years that, I mean, from basically from when when an individual starts to develop any kind of modicum of understanding, all the way up to 2021. That's a remarkable length of time. Um, we're already running late. I definitely want you to speak a little bit about institutionalization that happened. please.
Yeah, yeah. So that was right after college because my doctor decided, my psychiatrist decided that suddenly that none of my medication was working or having the kind of effect that it was supposed to, because I
Mm,
was still reporting that I was experiencing low mood
mm,
and not feeling like doing anything. And so right after I gave all my exams back to back, we had to give like 6 to 7 exams. Plus, there was a dissertation that we had to write. After doing all of that, I was shipped off to this mental health and rehabilitation center where most people were there for either people who had like really bad had dementia or Alzheimer's. So it was like a old age home plus an institution where people go for de-addiction, plus an institution where people who have really bad mental health go to sort of, be away from the world in a safe space. So it was a that kind of a space. And it was terrifying. I remember being very, 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 very deeply upset with my parents. And that, how could they send me to a place like this? And I I asked them that, what is the other option? And they said that we don't know what the other option is. If you want, you don't go, but then we don't know what to do. So then I decided that it would just be best if I myself submit to it. And I said, okay, let's go. I'll go. And I remember even there, this had become, my queerness had become something that had got me into an argument with someone. And
mm,
there were
mm.
few people who were like, oh, she's queer. So she would be okay with anything and everything, kind of,
Yeah.
the that kind of bullying.
Mm, mm,
Uh,
mm,
but luckily, I think um I I don't know how to put this, but I sort of think that no matter what happened, although being in that space was a very, very horrifying experience, luckily I got out within a month.
mm,
But another thing that I got there was that I think I learned a little bit about the importance of a sense of community
mm,
and the importance of belonging.
mm,
Because when I went there, luckily I found a group of people who were in their early 20s. So these were a group of kids. We were all a group of 7 kids. And 6 to 7 of us, we would just sit together every day. We would talk about our lives, what brought us here. Whenever, and I had become very close to two friends there, and all three of us would sit. We would talk about our issues back home. We would imagine, visualize what the outside would look like. Um, I remember whenever any of us would have a panic attack or something of that sort, the other two would
mm, mm,
always step in to help.
mm, mm,
And I think it was there that I decided that I should really do something in the field of mental health, because luckily all 7 of us, we were very, very high functioning. Like,
mm.
all of us were not knew what was happening to us. We had complete control over things. We were not really over medicated as such.
Yeah.
um, but there were others in the rehabilitation center who were in a really, really bad shape.
Mm, mm,
For that matter, even I was over medicated. I remember, so I've even written an article about this, which I can probably share with you. But I remember, like, at the age of 21, waking up and seeing that I have wetted my bed. And this went on for like days and days and days. And then I realized that the doctors were probably putting me on such strong sleeping medication, because I did struggle with insomnia. But they put me on such strong sleeping medication that even if
You
I
had no real sense of what was going on.
Yeah, exactly. Like I would take the medication within half an hour. It is like my legs would be buckling and I
Oof.
would have to lie down. Like I
Hmm.
remember one day my friends had to like carry me to my room because I had gotten late and stayed
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
past my bedtime.
Wow. Oh gosh. It sounds so banal and cheap and tried to ask this, Anukriti. But the thing is that from all of these experiences, uh, genuinely, are there some uh, lessons you've learned? And let me qualify what I mean. What I mean is that, like, is there sort of are there some fundamental truths that you figured out? For example, um, a young girl should guard against XYZ, or couples who are choosing to become parents should make sure they do XYZ, that kind of thing.
I think one thing that I've really learned is that we should all at least educate our children on what therapy is and just talk about that. Hey, if it ever gets hard and you just need to figure yourself out, you don't need to have a mental illness for it.
Yeah.
Or if you want to figure yourself out, you can go to therapy so that that door is open and somebody doesn't have to get to a point where oh they cannot sleep at all to seek mental health services.
Yeah.
And
It
also,
doesn't have to be at a treatment stage.
exactly. Like even, and secondly, I also feel that it's really important for us to develop a sense of to have a sense of community, to have people that we can really rely on and approach if we're having any kind of issues, be it mental health issues, physical health issues. People we can talk to, people we can bare our hearts to, and be ourselves with completely, because I feel like somewhere that is a way more healing than going to an individual, not to take away from the importance of individual therapy, but also like having a community, having people you can count on. I think that goes a long way.
I think you're on to something very significant, because this whole thing of being able to be oneself has gone from bad to worse, has dwindled, and is now at a stage where, and I'm sorry to sound so pessimistic, but it's almost extinct. We aren't ourselves with our parents, we aren't ourselves with our families, we aren't even ourselves with our spouses.
Yeah. And then it's very common for us to sort of feel like something is lacking, sort of feel like we're just going through the motions every day, not be able to find happiness in anything. So that I think is missing. And one thing that I remember we would do, like in rehab, all three of us, friends, we would sit together, and even if we were feeling low, we would just sort of sit with it. We had sort of learned to sit with it and talk about it, or just get it out of the way, rather than to completely, avoid it. I
Hmm.
think in the outside world, a lot of times what we tend to do is that low feel हो रहा है तो अच्छा चलो कुछ एकदम फन
उसको
करते हैं।
उसको सब्स्टिट्यूट कर देते हैं हम,
हाँ
or at
उस
least that's what we think we are doing.
या और we think
Absolutely. I mean, one hears this all the time. अरे ये क्या है? Go take a holiday, shopping कर लो, whatever.
exactly like heartbreak हो गया तो okay, let's go drinking, but how is that going to solve anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So true. That's also very insightful and important. Yeah. Hmm.
And I think one thing, then finally, when I did my master's in mental health, and when I did that from TIS, Mumbai. And while I was doing my dissertation there, I discovered this, this movement in the UK called the MAD movement. So it is this group of people who are sort of owning up to the fact that they have been service users, like mental health service users, or that they have been institutionalized at some point, or other people who have been in recovery from substances or whatever. And they are sort of trying to reclaim the word mad, and
Hmm.
they are trying to also say that you can't create services for people, mental health services for people, without having gone through something like this yourself. So they are creating this movement of user survivors kind of movement.
Hmm.
And service users are also service providers a
Hmm.
lot of
Hmm.
times. So it's really taken off in the UK. This is not very common in India.
Hmm.
But I remember reading this and feeling very, very inspired. And
Hmm.
I think it was after that that I decided to become a counselor or therapist.
Yeah.
And I decided that, it's about time that I start using my experience of not having support, of not knowing what to do, of not knowing where to go from here, and to use that to help other people. And
Absolutely. I mean, this is, of course, you are echoing something I've said time and again, that from this, if it births this kind of work and coming into the realm and inhabiting it yourself, that is the best case scenario and the best reason and motive to do it.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's also that, so I also use this modality in my therapy, which is called relational therapy, where the therapist is present as an individual with their thoughts, feelings, beliefs, values in the room, rather than a completely blank slate. So, of course, I don't always reveal everything to my clients, but I do try to reveal some aspects of my life to them. So, say, for example, I do have, like, I remember some clients, especially the ones with depression, they're always like, I can't get out of bed and I hate myself for it. And I always tell them that, hey, or a lot of times I have had clients who've been like, I don't think I'm ever going to get better.
Mm.
And I have been able to turn around to them and say that, hey, I have been there and look at me, I'm here now.
Yeah.
You can get better. Don't worry. It
Yeah.
might take time, but you'll get there.
Yeah. Again, from whatever little sort of counseling I do as well, I have found that to be an extremely effective way of going about things, because in a certain context, um, if you drip feed information, personal information, it really can contextualize and help the person you're trying to help. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it
Mm.
also strengthens that therapeutic bond.
Most certainly. Most
They
certainly.
trust you more.
Most certainly. I think a lot of clients, again, and especially in our country, do continue to view mental health professionals as somewhat non-human robotic resources. So I think it's important to humanize uh, the therapist.
Yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
agree with that.
Okay, well, it's been really wonderful. Grossly overstayed our time limit, but I can't thank you enough. It's really incredible. I'm so happy that there are people such as yourself who do this kind of work, because ये बहुत बार चर्चा हो चुकी है in the broader medical realm. uh, Doctors and clinicians tend to, I can't even blame them always, they tend to become a bit desensitized, particularly, people like surgeons and all, because I suppose it becomes so mechanical beyond a point. And for that individual or that family that's going, their whole lives revolve around that case. But to the professional, it's just another case. But
Yes.
certain empathy and a bedside manner, etc. आधा क्योर तो उसी से होता है. So I think it's really important, all the more for mental health professionals to come off as empaths. So thank you very, very much for the work that you do. I feel terribly sorry, like I told you quite plainly last time also, that I feel horrible about the things you've been through, but very, very glad for what has emerged. So take care, and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This was lovely.